Okay, so this is part two of People of Ancient Athens, and as you can see, what we're doing is we're going to focus about the role of women in ancient Athens, right? The role of women, right? So obviously, before we talk about the role of women, we're going to talk about the role of men a little bit more, right? So this one slide is focusing specifically on boys, right? So before they're the age of 18, because once they turn 18, they're expected to go enjoy the military, right? When the biggest difference is actually what we see is the moment that they're born is we actually see the difference starting to take place in raising of boys and girls in ancient Athens. So the moment they were born, an olive branch was placed on the top of the door, and what that symbolizes is a sign of victory, right? It's a sign of victory. It's a sign of celebration. Okay. When they were younger, they would play with other children in their home. They would spend time with women. If you recall from the previous videos, children and women were of the same class, right? They were seen as the same way. At the age of 7, boys would go to school and they would learn how to read. They'd learn how to write. They learned epic poems. And epic poems aren't like the way we use epic nowadays, but it's like these grand stories, right? They learned math, they learned science, and the big thing is they did a lot of physical sports, right? They did running, boxing, wrestling, javelin, track and field, discus throwing, team sports. A lot of what they're doing is military preparation and then work to be a really an active and good citizen. As soon as they became men, right, and they had their own household, their roles and responsibility would be to provide for their family. They would serve in their army when they turned 18 to 20, and then they would eventually go to the public, to the agora, they'd go to the assembly, and they really act as guardians for women. They'd go out with them, they were expected to go out with them, like in the town, they would speak for their wives a lot of the time, they'd make decisions for them, and when they would have daughters, they would choose husbands for them. Women, on the other hand, right, when the moment they were born, a piece of wool was placed on the door, right? And what it was is a sign of homemaking, as if like we're encouraging or hoping that she would create a good home, right? Similarly to the younger males, they would play with other children, but as soon as they turned 7, their education was very different. Instead of going to schools, their mom would teach them how to take care of a household. Right? They would learn how to read and write, but they mostly learn things like cooking and child raising, how to direct slaves and order them in the house, sewing, mending, all these kind of job skills about taking care of the home. And when they were 13 to 15 years old, right, they would be married off, often by their fathers, right? As adults, they would run the household and everything that they learned from their parents. They were expected to obey their husbands. That's really the number one thing. Right? They were not able to participate in government. They could have opinions. They could talk, obviously, to the citizens, to any male older than 18 years old, but they couldn't actually vote. Which kind of like brings me to a reflection question I want you to think about. Because really what it does, it highlights the difference between, in ancient Athens, the difference in raising boys and raising girls, right? So in the society that you're raised in, I'm going to say this and I want you to pause the video and think about it. You don't even have to respond to it, but I want you to think, do you think that boys and girls are raised differently? Right? Do you think that they are taught to act or think and live differently? Now, if you want to send me a message about this, I would love to have this conversation, right? Or even if you want to comment on this post below, it's really good to have some back and forth. But do you think in your society, wherever that is, it doesn't matter if it's the Middle East or Canada or anywhere, like where do you think that, at least even in your small world, do you think that boys and girls are raised to think differently, to be differently? Then I want you to think about, are males and females taught similar values today than they're taught in ancient Greece? Right? So do you think that women are still primarily taught to be home carers and males are primarily sent to like the school and being like the people who provide, and they join the military and they're the active ones, right? So maybe you do and maybe you don't, right? So I want to know your opinions on this. So take some time, pause the video, and reflect on that. So ancient Athens, really this is another question you kind of need to get at is it an equitable society? So remember back to our definition of equity, as you can see in the image here. Equity is fairness. It's about making sure people get access to the same opportunities so they all find success. And do you think, based on what we know about women and men and citizens and medics and slaves, do you think everyone has the same, in a community, do you think everyone has the same opportunities to find success? Right? Even today, right, in most societies, we're still asking and exploring this. We're asking ourselves, are others in a privileged position and receives benefits that others don't? Right? So you can kind of think about it. Are the citizens receiving things and benefits that other people who live in the same city-state don't get? Right? Are they privileged? Right? Is everyone represented in the decision-making process and able to make changes for their benefit? That's a question that we hear a lot about in democratic societies. Is everyone represented the same? Is it equitable? And what this really made me think about when I was kind of putting this together is a phrase called getting a seat at the table. So let's say this is a table, right? It's your dining room table, and around it are seats, right? If you've all had family dinners, this is where conversations happen, right? You want a good spot so you can be part of the conversation. Well, what happens in a government is that at that table, that's where all the decision making happens. And in ancient Athens, the people who occupy the street are males that are citizens, right? Males that are citizens. So they all have seats at this table, and they are able to make decisions. But what's difficult, though, is outside of that circle that we have slaves, we have medics, we have women, right? We have these people who are part of this society, who are impacted about what gets talked about at this table, and they really want to be a part of it. And so in a lot of societies today, we still have women, we have minorities who are asking for just one seat at that table so that they can raise concerns. I hope what we're doing is we're also connecting to what we talked about in democracy before about for the right to vote, right? And how that's a big arc, how people really fought for the right to vote. And right now what we're exploring is that there are a large group of people who do not have a say in this democracy. Ancient Athens started what we knew about democracy, but a lot of people don't have a voice. They don't have a seat at the table. So something you got to ask yourself, is this equitable? After you watch these two videos, complete the notes, answer the questions, and resubmit them.